Kael was loved for his arrogance. In Krithos city, his name moved through crowds like a current, carried on laughter, awe, and disbelief. He stood where others hesitated, leapt where others calculated, and survived where others failed. The city fed on spectacle, and Kael gave it freely, dancing along rooftops slick with rain, balancing on edges that promised death with a single mistake. He knew exactly what he was doing. Every movement was deliberate, every risk measured just enough to succeed, though he never let it appear that way. To those below, it looked effortless, reckless, untouchable. That illusion was part of the performance. Lena watched him from the ground with attention that never quite left her shoulders. Where others saw brilliance, she saw the thin line he walked. She understood how quickly admiration could turn into mourning. Still, she followed him, guided him, and, more often than not, saved him from dangers he dismissed too easily. Kael welcomed the attention of the crowd as naturally as breathing. Their admiration fed something in him, something that thrived on being seen, envied, and remembered. To him, a quiet life was not a life at all. That certainty wavered the day Rin appeared. The sorcerer emerged from shadow rather than light, as though the world itself had parted to let him through. There was no spectacle to him, no attempt to impress, yet his presence shifted the air. He carried with him something heavier than reputation, knowledge. What he brought was not praise, but warning. The prophecy he revealed did not speak of glory or triumph. It spoke of downfall, of a path carved by arrogance that would inevitably lead to ruin. Kael, whose life had been built on defying limits, treated the warning as he did all threats, with amusement and dismissal. And yet, when Rin left, he carried more than words behind him. The obsidian talisman remained, dark and cold against Kael's side, its weight subtle but persistent. It was not fear that lingered, but awareness. Something had shifted, even if Kael refused to name it. Rather than turn away, Kael leaned into the challenge. The Obsidian Isle, distant and dangerous, became his next pursuit. If fate had placed something before him, he would meet it head-on, as he always had. Lena followed, not out of blind loyalty, but because she understood what Kael refused to admit, that this time, the danger was different. The journey began with the Forgotten Forest, a place that resisted intrusion. Paths bent where they should not, shadows lingered longer than light allowed, and the forest itself seemed aware of every step taken within it. Kael moved through it with confidence, relying on instinct and reflex, cutting through threats with speed and precision. But the forest was not impressed by flair. It tested patience, awareness, and restraint. Creatures emerged not simply to attack, but to provoke reaction, to lure missteps. More than once, Kael found himself seconds from disaster, saved not by his own brilliance, but by Lena's caution. Each narrow escape pressed something unfamiliar into him. Not fear, but the realization that survival was not always earned through boldness. Beyond the forest rose the shattered peaks, where the world narrowed to edges and gravity became an ever-present threat. Every step demanded precision. Every movement carried consequence. It was there that Darren made his move. Unlike Kael, Darren did not rely on spectacle. His ambition was quieter, sharper, driven not by admiration, but by the need to surpass. He had watched Kael from a distance for too long, measuring his strengths, waiting for weakness. The betrayal came without warning. A loosened rope, a miscalculated step, small actions with deadly implications. Lena nearly fell, saved only by Kael's reflexes, but the moment left a mark. For the first time, Kael faced not just danger, but intent. Someone had chosen to test him, not as an obstacle, but as a rival to be removed. The mountains did not forgive distraction. Kael was forced to adapt, to watch not only the path ahead, but the shadows behind him. Confidence alone no longer felt like enough. At the end of the journey stood the Obsidian Isle. It rose from the water like something carved from night itself, its surface reflecting light in sharp, fractured edges. At its center, the artifact waited, and before it stood Thorn. The Guardian was not merely an obstacle, but a judgment. Every movement was controlled, every strike deliberate. There was no wasted effort, no unnecessary force. Thorn did not overwhelm. He measured. Kael entered the confrontation as he had entered every challenge before, with confidence, speed, and daring. It was not enough. For the first time, he was pushed back not by brute strength, but by precision. His movements, once fluid and unstoppable, were anticipated, countered, turned against him. Each attempt to overwhelm the Guardian only revealed another flaw, another gap in judgment. The realization came slowly, but undeniably. This was not a test he could charm his way through. Pain forced clarity where pride had resisted it. With Lena at his side, steady and unyielding, Kael adjusted. He slowed. He observed. He began to act not on impulse, but on understanding. Then Darren returned. The final attempt was not subtle. It was direct, desperate, driven by the same ambition that had followed them from the beginning. But Kael was no longer the same. Where he once would have rushed forward, he now waited. Where he once would have relied on instinct alone, he anticipated. The fight ended not with spectacle, but with control. Darren fell, not because Kael was more daring, but because he was more prepared. At last, the artifact remained within reach. The final step was not a battle, but a reckoning. When Kael reached for it, the weight of everything he had been pressed against him, every risk taken without thought, every moment where arrogance had nearly cost him everything. The prophecy was not a distant threat anymore. It was present, undeniable. But he did not turn away. He steadied himself, not with confidence alone, but with understanding. The same daring that had carried him this far remained, but it was no longer blind. It was guided. The artifact accepted him. The test was complete. When Kael stepped away from the Obsidian Isle, he was not a different person, but he was no longer unchanged. His arrogance remained, but it had been reshaped, grounded in something stronger than spectacle. Lena walked beside him, no longer just a voice of caution, but a part of the legend itself. Darren faded into the distance, his rivalry unresolved but transformed. And Kael moved forward, not as someone who had conquered fate, but as someone who had learned how to face it. He was still daring, still bold, still impossible to ignore. But now he was something more. He was a legend not just because he survived danger, but because he understood it. And the world, vast and waiting, stretched out before him once again. The moral of the story is that arrogance can make you shine, but only humility and awareness will keep you standing.